Lesson number 4, which is adding animation. In this lesson, we'll learn how to do the following, which is to animate the position, scale, and rotation of objects, adjust the pacing and timing of your animation, animate transparency and special effects, change the path of motion and create animation inside symbols, change the easing of the motion, and animate in 3D space. Okay, so let's get on to our lesson, as we are going to go into this animation over here. Okay. So let's just open up Finder, and we gotta go to the end, and we gotta just open up this file over here, which is the Swift file. Now in this lesson, we'll be using Flash Professional to change aspects of an object, its position, its color, its transparency, its size, and rotation over time. And hopefully we can get our file up. Here we go. Okay. So that's what we're going to do in this lesson for today. Okay, so let's just open up our start folder. Okay, so we're going to open up this file here. So we're going to come over here and we go to start folder, and we're going to go open this file here, 04 start FLA. And as you can see here, I'll just show all. So this is our stage here. And we're going to fit it into window. Okay, so this fit in window. And we're going to save this file. Save as. And we're going to call it 04 working copy.fla. Now what happens is that we've already got a timeline created for us, so if we got, and what we're going to learn about is how we create animation. Now in animation, what happens is that we create this thing called tweens, and what it does is that what tweens stand for is the in-betweens, because in the old days when people did animation, there would be a master animator, senior animator that will create the keyframes. That means the frames which have significant changes in action, and there'll be junior animators to create the in-between frames. Thus the word tweening refers to smooth transitions between keyframes. Now notice in this file here we have several layers here. One is the middle car, the right car, the man, the woman, the footer, and the ground. All these contain animation. If I move my timeline over here, you can see the animation slowly occur over time. Okay, so let's go on to the first step that we are to do. So let's lock all layers over here. And we're going to create another layer above the footer layer and rename it city. So we're going to come over here and let's click here and we're going to call it city. And we're going to drag a bitmap called City BG from the bitmaps folder. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, and there is a file here called citybg.jpg. And we're going to just drag it to the stage. Okay, so now we're going to look at the properties. So we're going to set the X and Y position to 0, and Y is to 90. And then I'm going to right click this, and we're going to do this called create a motion tween. You can also come here to insert motion tween. Either way will work. So I'm going to come here, create motion tween. Now a dialog box opens. It says that it's not a symbol and it requires symbols. So it asks you whether you want to convert it to a symbol so you can do a motion tween. So click OK. And so notice, if you notice over here, it's called symbol 1 in the library here. Okay, so we have a symbol created, and also notice that in this city layer here, there's this blue layer here, blue frames, and there's an icon over here which shows the small little frames becoming bigger. It shows that this is called a motion tween layer. Tween layers are distinguished by a special icon and by frames that are blue in color. So tween layers are reserved for motion, so and thus no drawing is allowed in the tween layer. So let's just move our timeline playhead to about frame 190, the last frame over here. Now we got to select the instance of the cityscape, so over here. And while holding the shift key, we got to move the instance up the stage. So notice we got moving for precision, set the Y value in the properties. Okay, so notice I can actually come here and then move it up. Now if I want to make sure it's correct, so I'm going to put here Y0. Okay, so now we've got our movement here. Now notice over here, if I zoom, there's a small little black diamond shape at the end here. This shows that it is a keyframe. Okay, so now I'm just going to move it over here and move our time frame here, and notice what happens now. We've got this animation here. Now we want the animation to proceed at a slower pace and to take up a longer period of time. We need to lengthen the entire tween span between the beginning and end keyframes. If you want to make it shorter, you need to decrease the time span. Now we lengthen or shorten a motion tween by dragging the ends of the timeline. Okay, so let's just come over here. Okay, so I'm going to move this all the way to frame number 60. There you got it. So it takes a shorter time to move. And we're going to move it all the way to the beginning here. And we're going to move this all the way to frame 10. Okay, so you want the last keyframe of your motion tween to hold for the entire duration. So you need to add frames to make the animation to last that long. So add frames by shift dragging the end of the tween span. So I'll come here, come to the end here. I'm going to press shift key, make sure I press the shift key and drag. So notice how the animation moves now. Now when you click on the motion tween on the timeline, the entire span is selected. Okay, so this allows you to move the entire tween forward and backward at a time as a single unit. However, you want to move particular keyframes within the motion tween to change the pacing. You have to select individual frames. Holding down the Control on Windows or the Command key on the Mac will let you select single frames or span of frames within a motion tween. So let's just command click the keyframe at frame number 60. So command click. So this allows you to select the frame here. So I'm going to just click and drag it to frame number 40. So notice that the end of the frame, end of the animation has not gone back, it just moves the keyframe. So, what we learned is that we can move keyframes. Now we can also affect transparency. In fact, we can animate transparency. So you can change the color effect of an instant in one keyframe to change the value of the color effect in another keyframe. So we want to change the cityscape so that it blends in, it fades in, instead of just appears out of nowhere. So we're going to come over here. So command click the cityscape instance over here. Got to go to properties, choose, and we got to choose alpha for color effect. And we got to set the alpha value to 0. And notice what happens now. We can actually do a fade in. So we gotta come here to frame 40, make sure the cityscape is selected, and we gotta come back here and change the alpha value to 100%. So you can see there's a little fade in effect for the cityscape. Okay, so let's preview by choosing Command Enter, or you can come over here to Test Movie. So let's test it out. Okay. Now we also have filters. Now filters give instances special effects such as blurs and drop shadows, and these can also be animate. And you can refine the motion tween of the actors next by applying a blur filter to make it appear as if the camera changes focus. And it's about the same thing as animating changes in position or in color effect. Okay, so let's make sure this is visible. Make sure this is visible. Okay, so sure this is visible. Okay, we got lock everything except the woman layer. And we're gonna move the playhead to frame 23. Okay, what we're going to do is select the woman instance. Okay, now in properties, expand the filters over here. And we're going to add one more, which is the blur filter. Now you can also see over here in basic motion, there's a color effect, and notice there is a blur filter over here. Now over here in filters, we can click on the link icon to make sure it's constrained. So both the X and Y directions equally, and we're going to set the X and Y values to 20 pixels. Okay, so now notice there is a permanent blur here. Okay, so let's create another keyframe at frame 40. So I'm going to come over here at frame 140, sorry. Right click. And we're going to insert the keyframe filter. Okay, and then we're going to move the red playhead to end at frame 160. Make sure the woman is selected. And we're going to change the value of the blur filter to x0, y0. So come here and then we're going to just change it. So notice now there's a blurring here, and then at this point here, the woman comes into the picture. So what happens is that we need to understand what are keyframes. Keyframes show us that there are certain changes in properties. It doesn't have to be position, it doesn't have to be just a property like rotation. It can also be in filters or even things like the brightness or the alpha value of some object. So when you view a tween span, you can actually choose to view keyframes of only certain properties. For example, you can choose to view only the position keyframes to see when your object moves. So for example, you can actually view your motion editor, and you can see there are different things that we can see here. This is our filter. We can even see our position, X and Y positions. So, and the motion editor is a special panel. This is a special that displays all the properties of your motion tween visually as lines on a graph. It's helpful when multiple properties are changing at different times. For example, the motion editor for the woman here shows here changes in the X and Y position. And alpha values in the first few frames. So here's the eases, and here's the basic motion. We've got transformations, blurs, eases. So we'll learn more about how to use a motion editor later in the next lesson. So let's lock all the layers in the timeline and insert a new layer inside the cars folder and rename it left car. And we got to go to frame 75. And we got to insert a new keyframe. Insert timeline keyframe. Okay, so now we are here. So let's drag a new symbol, a movie clip symbol called car left from the library panel to the stage at frame 75. We got to select the free transform tool. And we're going to make the car look smaller by pressing the shift key. Okay, so we're going to make sure it's about 400 pixels wide. So width here, we're going to make it proportional, 400. Okay. And we're going to move it to about 7x710. So come here, 710 and 488. So that's the position of our car here. Okay, for properties, for color effect, we're going to choose alpha. And we're going to set it to 0% transparency. That means fully transparent. Okay, you've got to right click this one and create motion tween. Let's move this to frame number 100. We got to select the transparent instance of this car, and in the properties inspector, we got to change it to 100%. Select the free transform tool. And while pressing the shift key, we're going to increase the size of our car. We're going to set the dimensions of the car to, the width should be 13795, 13795.5, and the height should be 467.8, 467.8. And we're going to set the position of the car to 607 by 545. Okay, and then looking at the overlap of the layer, we're going to move this right over here so that the middle car overlaps. Okay, so what we did was a little bit of a motion tween. So notice that our car comes over here and it appears here. Now, the motion tween here, these colored dots over here, indicate the motion of our car. And it can be edited easily so that the car travels on a curve, can be moved, scaled, rotated, just like any other object on the stage. So now, just to give an example how it moves, okay, we're going to open the sample file motion path.fla. Okay. So we're going to use the selection tool here, and we're going to select this. This is the path of our spaceship over here. Notice the spaceship is moving along this line. So what we can do is that we can move it anywhere we like. We can also manipulate this line here. Okay, so let me just zoom it out a little bit. We can make it smaller. We can rotate it. We can even do things like move this line here using the this tool here. So we can edit the path by using the pen tool, and we can choose the convert anchor point tool, which is over here. And we can even drag a control handle. We can choose the sub-selection tool and manipulate this line here. You can also use the selection tool to manipulate the line. Now, sometimes the orientation of the object traveling on the line is important. Notice the spaceship does not follow the line that we give it. So there's this thing called the orient to path option. So in the properties inspector, we got select the motion tween. Now notice select the motion tween, I'm going to choose orient to path. So notice it actually follows the line. So what happens is that it creates keyframes for the rotation along the motion path. So the nose of the rocket ship always follows the line. The motion tween model in Flash Professional CS5 is object-based. This means you can easily swap out the target of a motion tween. For example, if I rather see an alien move, I can just replace it with an alien symbol from the library to preserve the animation. So I'm going to select the spaceship, and I'll go to the library, and notice there's an alien symbol here, and I'm just going to drag it and put it here to replace the existing object. Ta-da! And notice it follows the path as well. Another way to replace it instead of this way, let me just undo this, is you go to properties, select your object over here, and you can swap it with your alien here, and that's it. Same thing. Now, often an object that's animated on the stage will have its own animation. For example, if you have a butterfly moving across the stage, you want to have it flapping its wings, or you want the alien that we move to be moving its arms. Okay, these things are called nested animations because they are contained inside movie clip symbols. And movie clips have their own timeline that's independent of the main timeline. So, for example, if I want to make the alien wave his arms inside the movie clip, we can open it up and create its own timeline inside of him. So let's just come over to the library and double click alien. So notice now we are in our own timeline here, and you notice I can actually select different parts of the alien, and these parts corresponds to the head, the feet, the body. So I'm going to come over here to the person's right arm and go right click on it and say create motion tween. So Flash will create 1 second's worth of frames for you to animate. We got to choose the free transform tool, and we got to drag it all the way upwards. Rotate the alien's hand to show the height. So let's move out. Okay. So let's come back over here, and we got to do the same thing for his other arm. Oops. Sorry, we have to create motion tween first. We got to come over here, and we got to do that. Now, unfortunately, we don't see the rest of the alien's body, so let's just come over here, select all these frames, and we got to click Insert Timeline Frame. So now we got this movement here. Okay, so let's get our symbol editing mode. And now we're going to move our alien here. Now he doesn't flap his arms, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to preview by testing the movie. Notice he's moving his arms. Okay, so now you also can use this thing called the motion editor to provide more fine tuning of his motion. As you can see, these are the graphs. So every object we have different properties like its rotation, its x and y position, its skew x, skew y, scale x. Okay, so let's select the alien on stage. Okay, you can move this slightly higher. And we got just minimize all this. Okay, so let's go and click on viewable frames over here. So we gotta come over here to see over here is viewable frames. Okay. So this shows you all the visible frames available. And we gotta look at the basic motion here. Okay, so you can actually see the frame animation over here. And we can also change the size of our graph. So actually this allows us to change the size of our graphs. So you can actually change how we view certain parts of our motion. Now we've got to change another property of our flapping alien with the motion editor. See how easy it is to animate multiple properties independently. Now we've got to create a fade-in effect by changing the alpha property. Next, so let's look at the color effect. So come here and we've got to choose color effect. And we've got to click on the plus sign here and choose alpha. So now we've got one thing called alpha here. So we can select alpha amount. So you can see there is a graph here, and what happens is expanded. Now this black dotted horizontal line displays at 100%, goes all the way to the end of the timeline. And represents the opacity of the alien or the transparency. So we got to click on the first frame. Make sure the first frame is selected there. And we got to come over here and then drag it all the way to 0%. All the way to 0. So now if you move it all the way here, So let's move the red hat player to frame number 20. Okay. So to insert a keyframe, now notice over the whole animation, this alien is transparent. So we gotta go to frame 20 and we gotta click the diamond icon over here. So notice there is a keyframe added over here. You can also right click to insert a keyframe, right? So there are several ways to do it. Okay, so what we can do is go move it all the way to 100%. So you can see animation, the alien just fades in. Now, how do you navigate keyframes? Okay, so there's one way is to use these arrows here. So you can go here. Notice it goes to different keyframes. Now we can also right click to remove a keyframe. We can also click the keyframe and click on the yellow button to remove the keyframe. Or we can even shift click and we can move several frames together. Now we've made a mistake, we can always do a reset. Now how do we reset? We click on this button over here. So we can change it back to the default values. So it's all back to the same line again. We can also delete a certain property just by clicking the minus button and we choose alpha. And there is no more transparency fading at all. Okay, another key concept is this thing called easing. Now, easing refers to the way in which your motion tween proceeds. In the most basic sense, it can be thought of as acceleration or deceleration. So things just don't move. They slowly build up or slowly slow down. There's some kind of acceleration to it. So we want something that's a more gradual change that looks more natural. You can actually set eases in the tween. Okay, so let's go to motion editor and click in the alpha property. Okay, and we got this. Let's come back over here. And we're going to come back to frame 20. We're going to come over here, frame 20. We're going to add a keyframe here. Come over here. Make sure the alpha value is 0. Let's select this point again here, and we got right click. We got choose smooth point. Notice the curve is now a bit more curved here. And notice what I'm going to do now is that I am going to drag this line here to make it more smooth. Okay, so I can do the same thing over here, right click. Smooth point, and I can drag this as well. Gotta choose the keyframes. So notice I can adjust the keyframes over here. Now let's look at our transparency. It looks a bit more smoother now. So that's easing for you, okay? So easing can be a very powerful way of creating specialized motions. For example, we can use a bouncing motion and that can be created with just 2 positional keyframes. Now, ease can also be applied in an ease out, ease in, ease out property in the properties value. So it can come over here. So notice I can come over here. I'm gonna select the keyframe over here. And notice there's actually an ease in, ease out over here as well. So I can actually increase the ease in, ease out here as well. So when you put ease here in the properties, it will apply globally to all the different properties, from motion to fade-ins to rotation. So if you want it to be more finer, to have a finer control over different properties, you will have to use the motion editor. So this is how we do it. Now we can also use preset easers. Now preset easers allows you to ease different types of objects, or you can use preset, like for example, you can have a bouncing motion. So in this next example, let's go back to this preset, to our first file here. Okay, we got to come to the library, we got to click on car left, double click it. So this is car left. And we're going to look at our timeline here. Notice there is no movement here. So I'm going to lock this layer, the lights layer. I'm going to right click this layer here, which is the car. And I'm going to choose Create Motion Tween. Now there's no movement yet, so I'm going to move it all the way to the end. Use the selection tool. And I'm going to move the car down 5 pixels. Now how do I do that? I can actually just come over here and just put it to -139. Okay, sorry, 149, 139. Okay. So it goes down 5 pixels. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click the motion editor. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to eases and I'm going to choose random for the eases. So I'm going to select the random ease. Now notice it actually jumps back and forth in random intervals. So I'm going to change the value here to 15. Okay, so notice there's more random value jumps. I'm going to go back to basic motion. So I'm going to come here and choose random. So what happens is that it applies random easing to the motion tween. So instead of a smooth change in the position, it makes the car jerk up and down randomly, simulating a rumbling, idling car. Now, since this animation is inside car left, choose Control Test Movie to see a preview. Okay, so there we have our animation there. Finally, we add a title and animate it in 3D space. Now, animating in 3D presents the added complication of the third z-axis. So when you choose the 3D rotation or 3D translation, you need to be aware of the global transform option at the bottom of the tools panel. Now, when you come to 3D, remember this global transform. Be very careful of this. Moving an object with the global option on makes the transformations relative to the global coordinate system, whereas moving an object with the local option on makes the transformations relative to itself. So let's create one more layer at the top of the layer stack and rename it title. So let's close this one, and we got insert another layer. We'll click it and we're going to call it title. Okay, we got to come over to frame number 120. And we got to insert a new keyframe. Insert timeline keyframe. We got to go to library here, and we got to move movie title over to here. Let's position it at 180 by 90. Okay. And we've got to right click on the movie title. We've got to create a motion tween. Notice now the timeline creates a motion tween timeline here. It converts the current layer to a tween layer so you can begin to animate. So let's move it to about frame 140. Select the 3D rotation tool. Make sure this is deselected. So notice this is the y-axis, this the green. So we're going to rotate it around so that its angle is about minus 50 degrees. If you're not sure, you can always look at the transform panel. So notice it goes something like this. Okay, so we can come over here. So we got to click and drag it around the y-axis again. So there it's about 25 degrees. Okay. So what happens is that it looks as if it's rotating in 3D space. So you can do this thing called scrubbing, which is moving the playhead so you can see the animation. Or by choosing Control and Play. You can also choose Window, Toolbars, Controller to use these buttons here, and you can rewind and play all the way. Now, however, it only shows certain types of animation. You want to see exactly how it's seen by an audience. You have to do a test movie, and it choose in Flash Professional, and you choose Test, and we'll actually export it as a SWF file, SWF, and there you have it. The SWF file is compressed, and the final Flash media is embeddable inside a HTML page. And that's it. Thank you very much.